Hey everyone, and welcome to the Online Ocean Symposium. Today I have the great pleasure of broadcasting live from South by Southwest Eco, a conference on sustainability, technology, innovation, and all the things in between. In this hangout, we will be talking specifically on innovation, science, and the ocean. I want to remind all of you viewers at home that you can actually ask questions of the panel through the Q&A function of the actual either YouTube or event page. But really, let's just dive right in. With me here in the press room today is Kathy Flood, Managing Director and co-founder of the Cascade Game Foundry. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
No problem. You have a table here at South by Southwest Eco. Can you tell us a little bit about what you're exhibiting in the exhibitors hall?
Absolutely. So we're showing our game, Infinite Scuba, which is a reality-based scuba diving game. You do what real divers do, so you explore the ocean, you identify wildlife, find artifacts, so you learn a little marine biology, a little dive science history. The first dive site we have is a realistic shipwreck, so a real shipwreck in Micronesia that was sunk in 1944. So you see all the corals that have been built up since 1944. It looks like the actual wreck. So you get to get in the water without getting wet, explore the world without having to pay the gigantic fee to go to Micronesia.
That sounds like a fantastic project, though getting wet is really fun.
It is.
I actually had a chance to play this yesterday, and it was really, really fun. It was really fantastic. You feel totally immersed in the water, and you want to explore the entire area. How has the reception been here at the festival of the game?
It's been fantastic. It's gone over very, very well. We're a little bit of an outlier in the game world because we're nonviolent, and we're told we're a little too cerebral sometimes because you learn something. So we're just trying to show that that can be a fun thing to do in games, and it's gone over extremely well with this audience.
Well, specifically with this audience at South by Southwest Eco, you actually launched a new feature of the game. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. We launched our Sylvia Earle diver model at the show. So if you show up at the booth, you can actually dive as Sylvia, and she's wearing the gear that she really wears. So her wetsuit and her red fins,
Nice.
Mask, all that good stuff. And the people who recognize Sylvia from the signs, they come in and it's like, you can be her, and they're so excited about it. So it's been a real pleasure to show it.
The fact that she's actually a keynote speaker here and has participated
right.
in a panel is pretty awesome, too. Has she played herself yet?
Not yet.
All
not
right.
yet. We're hoping she's going to come by after she speaks this afternoon.
When that happens, I want to get a picture of that. That would be hilarious. That would be really awesome. Cascade, with the dive sites that you have, you actually utilize data from various sources and imagery and what have you. If you're looking to partner with other organizations to make other spots in the ocean playable, what's involved with that, and how can organizations get involved?
Send me mail, and we can talk about what would be required to build a new site. Basically, the toughest part for us is to get the actual data. So if we could get any kind of side scan, sonar, or other sort of descriptive data that describes a particular area, and then helping us understand if you're an expert on a site, tell me what the iconic critters are, the landmarks, that type of stuff, so we can provide the most realistic, immersive feeling of being actually on that dive site.
Well,
so any photographs, video, any kind of reference material that helps us impart what it's really like to dive on that site.
Well, that sounds like a lot of different opportunities for both organizations and individuals just to participate in this really awesome, educational, fun game that encourages people to, explore the ocean. Thank you, Kathy. For those of you at South by Southwest Eco, you can check out their booth in the exhibition hall. For those at home, you can check out the program on their website, correct? Awesome. So
it's infinitescuba.com.
There you go. There's the plug. Next up, I'd love to introduce the Chief Scientist for Oceans and Conservation for Conservation International, Dr. Gregory Stone. Welcome to the program.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going. Sorry, it's going great over here. How's it going over by you?
It's good. I'm here on the big island of Hawaii. It's a beautiful day. I can see the ocean out the window, so I feel connected to it.
That's awesome. Blue mind. What is the role of the Chief Scientist for Oceans? What do you do?
Well, I oversee all the science at Conservation International, and we have a global program. We have offices in about 30 countries, about 1,000 employees, and we believe in the strong underpinnings of good science to achieve conservation outcomes. So we basically have the scientific productivity of essentially a university department. We have some 40, 50 scientists and publish a lot in the literature. So we apply science for the benefit of the planet and people.
That sounds like a great endeavor and a lot of productivity. You are an expert in undersea technology and exploration. Can you speak a little bit about the current trends that you're seeing there? Any noteworthy innovations?
Yeah, I think we're at a cusp here where you have to remember that oceanography is a very young science, a very young field. It essentially started in the 1960s, really, modern oceanography. I mean, we poked around in the oceans in the 1800s, but it was very primitive and just nets and hooks and lines. But it was in the 60s that we started to build undersea systems that could actually take people routinely down into the depths. And we built some underwater research stations, habitats that people could live in. But the real barrier at that time, and up until recently, has been cost. The technology cost so much that each country in the world might have 1 or 2 submarines, and that's it. What I see happening now is we're getting to the point where the costs are beginning to crash, come way down. And we have the ability suddenly, in the last, I would say, few years or decade, let's say, to achieve the same kind of reach into the ocean, but probably at an order of magnitude less cost than what we have traditionally experienced in undersea and ocean exploration. So I'm very buoyed by this because I think it means that each country, instead of having 1 or 2 deep-sea submersibles, could have 100. And considering that the planet is mostly water, and most of that water is very deep, and if we are to really understand what's going on the Earth, we really have to understand the ocean. This is a really optimistic time in my view.
So would you say that, say like the maker movement or the open ROV aspect, is that kind of like an amplifier for ocean exploration and that sort of thing?
I'm sorry, you said the beaker movement?
No, sorry, the maker movement, like people making their own remote operated vehicles and exploring. And
your question was, do I think that's good?
Do you see that as kind of like an amplifier effect to?
That's part. I guess that's really part of your. No, I'm glad you brought that up because I have been made aware of that this last year. I think that that's a wonderful effect, and it is an amplifier, and it brings the ocean into almost any hands. The ROV, there's 2 ways, or at least 2 ways of getting into the ocean. One is putting a person in it, either in a submarine or a pressure sphere, or sending a robot down. And I really believe that we have to have both. And we still have never been able to duplicate the computer that exists up here. And we don't have any cameras that can duplicate what the human eye can see. And we don't have any computers that can duplicate the sort of visceral experience, emotional experience of being in the ocean. So we still have to send people down there. But these unmanned systems, especially the ones that people can build themselves or buy at an affordable cost, I think are an amplifier, and they're fantastic.
Well, that's really great. Aaron, I believe that you wanted to chime in a little bit right here. Can you,
Sure. I have perhaps an obvious question that people that are lay people like me that not directly involved in ocean science every day, but might be interested to know. What are your opinions of James Cameron? Do you consider him sort of a gallivanting dilettante dabbling on the fringes of ocean science, or is he genuinely pushing the envelope and introducing new technology and raising awareness about the innovations and advancements that you're describing?
I think James Cameron did a great thing. I mean, he basically said, listen, no one's been to the bottom of the ocean at depth since 1961, I think, or in the early 60s when John Walsh and Picard went down there. And he basically said, hey, we can do it. I'll do it. I'll show you how to do it. And he did it. And then he gave the system to the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institute and moved on. So I think it was a good demonstration of the fact that it's not that hard to go to the bottom of the ocean, that we just haven't gone there because we haven't had the will do it, or it's not a question of money, it's not a question of technology, it's a question of will. And I think what he did was just fine. If I had the resources, I might have done it too.
I know that I would have done it if I had the resources. So that actually brings me to the next point. Where do you actually see the future of ocean exploration and protection?
Well, you know what I see is, and I kind of want to just revert back to Buckminster Fuller. I think had one of the most powerful metaphors in the '60s when we first saw that picture of the Earth from the Apollo space missions. He said he coined the term spaceship Earth, and it was the first time we really saw that we were on this small rock, traveling through space at 67,000 miles an hour, and everything we've ever had, everything we ever will have is here. And if you did one day wake up on a spaceship, what's the first thing you'd do? You'd look around and say, what do I got? How long is it going to last, right? And essentially the oceans are what we got. The question is, what are they, how do they operate, and how long are they going to last? So to me, the biggest challenge is to bring to bear existing technologies and existing, I hate the word, but information systems to the ocean, like we do to the financial sector, like we do to the weather systems, like we do to the healthcare systems. Now, I've been in the, I was actually diving with a hedge fund manager once who had a submarine, and we were down at 2,000 feet looking at 6-gilled sharks off the coast of Japan, and suddenly he said, we have to surface. And I said, why? He said, because the markets in Europe are opening. So we went up to his boat, and he had this room with all the financial feeds coming into it from around the world, and all the financial investment houses in New York have this. They know the currency markets, they know the stock exchange trends, everything, because there's a tremendous motivation to make money. Same thing with weather, same thing with healthcare systems. Imagine if we would apply that same focus to the oceans, so that you could go into a room and say, okay, where are the yellowfin tuna spawning today? Ah, there they are. Let's not fish that area today. Where are there potentially submarine earthquakes today? Oh, okay, let's watch out for tsunamis in this area. We're still walking around with notebooks and pencils, taking notes when it comes to information systems and observations in the ocean. So for me, it's a very simple matter of applying the same energy, the same technology, and the same resources to the oceans as we do to these other areas. And believe me, if we don't do it, the ocean is more important than all these other areas put together. Because if we don't get the ocean right, we're going to lose spaceship Earth. And in closing, the thing that most people don't remember about Buckminster Fuller's metaphor is he said the problem is the spaceship didn't come with a manual. So essentially today, ocean technology and ocean research, to me, is writing the manual for spaceship Earth. And that says it all right there.
That's a very, very good point. I did want to draw attention a little bit to last year at South by Southwest Eco. There were a couple of really great panels about visualizing ocean data and actually bringing together the different aspects of ocean data, including shipping lines, what we knew about different fisheries information and migratory patterns, that sort of stuff. And it's interesting to see that we're kind of on this cusp of all this data and information coming together in various ways, not just through scientific aspects, but even through other ways of experiencing it. My last question for you, Greg, is actually here at the conference this year, Conservation International has been playing clips of movies where famous actors like Edward Norton, Julia Roberts, Harrison Ford act as soil or Mother Earth or the ocean. Can you tell us a little bit about this campaign?
Sure. Absolutely. The campaign started in a conversation that we had with Lee Clow, who was Steve Jobs' communication guru. And Lee Clow had one client his whole career, and it was Steve Jobs and Apple. He's the one that came up with the Think Different campaign. He came up with there's a famous 1984 Super Bowl ad when Apple introduced itself to the marketplace.
Through the TV.
Remember that one? The woman through the
1984 one, yeah.
Yeah, so we sat down with him and explained, our mission and what the problems were, and he was pretty stunned that no one knew about the magnitude of the problems on the planet, and that all the things that we're doing. So it was his idea. He said, well, how about if we give nature a voice? Let's have nature speak to us for the first time and talk to humanity about our impact on nature and what nature has to offer us. So that was how it started. And then, the format was chosen to be very short. And then we were very lucky to get a lot of celebrity participation for the voices. And there's the ocean, there's the rainforest, there's the coral reef, there's soil, and they're all kind of interesting. Some are funny, some are serious, and we're getting tremendous feedback. We just launched it, I think it was yesterday, so it's fresh, really fresh off the block here.
And these can all be seen on Conservation International's website?
They can all be seen there, absolutely, and there's a dedicated website called natureisspeaking.org.
All right, everybody at home, remember, natureisspeaking.org.
Yep.
Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Stone. I will get back to you when it comes to the group participation. But next up, we have the pleasure of chatting with Hannah Pryor, who is currently aboard the ship, the EV Nautilus. Ahoy, Hannah.
Ahoy, how's it going?
It's nice and not rocky over here. How's it going on the ship?
It's actually pretty calm out here today. We're about 70 nautical miles east of the island of Tobago, in Trinidad and Tobago, and the sun is shining and the ocean is all around and it's just gorgeous.
That's fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit about what the Nautilus ship is and what are you actually doing in Trinidad?
Absolutely. So the Nautilus exploration program was begun by Dr. Robert Ballard in 2008 and is run by the Ocean Exploration Trust. The exploration vessel Nautilus, which is a 64-meter ship of exploration, is at the center of the program. And the aim of everything we do out here is to explore areas of the ocean that have never been explored before and really to push the boundaries of ocean engineering and technology, science, education, and communication.
That's really fantastic. Can you tell us a little bit about what types of technology that the Nautilus uses on a daily basis?
Sure. So the ship, when we turn up to a location, we've normally done a bit of homework before we get here, but often the areas have not been explored or have been explored very little. So for example, when we went to the Cayman Rise area last year, the map that we were using was still measured in fathoms. So the first thing we normally do when we arrive in an area is use the multi-beam sonar that's mounted on the ship's hull to create maps. So we spend some time mowing the lawn, as we affectionately call it, in water anywhere between 10 and 7,000 meters, identifying what the seafloor looks like, the sediment characteristics, and the Trinidad mud volcanoes. Yes?
Sorry, you were breaking up a little bit.
Sorry.
So after you get this mapping data of, say, volcanoes, etc., what's the next step?
The next step, we have two ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, on board the ship, Hercules and Argus. So we normally send them down in tandem. They can go to 4,000 meters depth. From there, they can take high-definition footage and photos. They've got, Hercules has a couple of manipulator arms for holding equipment and collecting samples like temperature probes and push cores, picking up rocks, which we've been doing a lot of out here on the mud volcanoes and at Kikimjeni submarine volcano in Grenada. We can store the samples on board. We can also mount a lot of other equipment on board the ROV. So this cruise we've had a laser spectrometer, which has been measuring the composition of gases in situ. So normally you would have to take the gas sample and bring it back up to the surface and then send it off to the lab and wait for the results to come back. We've actually been able to measure it at the source, which has been pretty interesting. Doing magnetometer surveys and a whole lot of other different science at a depth of 2,300 meters. And the really exciting thing about the Nautilus program is that we're able to send all the information from the ROVs back up the cable to the ship, and then out to the world via satellite. And using telepresence technology, the world can interact with us.
That's really fantastic. I know myself I've been viewing the broadcast feed and checking out some of the stuff that you've been finding down there. Can you speak a little bit about how people can actually go? Can you elaborate a little bit on how people at home can interact?
We have a website called Nautilus Live, and when we're exploring, Nautilus Live is online 24/7, so you are literally seeing what we're seeing as we're seeing it. There's a box on the website there where viewers can type in questions for the team on the control van, in the control van on the ship. So we have the pilots, the navigator, video and science teams, and communicators like myself. So you can ask us about what we're seeing, what we're doing, and we can answer that in real time. We also have outreach with schools and universities, museums and aquariums across the United States and around the world from here on the ship as well.
That's really fantastic. Now, since I have the opportunity to ask you live right now, what do you do with all the data you collect?
We have a number of scientists on board the ship and a number of scientists also on shore who are using data for their specific projects. So this particular leg of the season is really, really exciting because in addition to the team here on the ship, we also have a team based at the University of Rhode Island, and they're from universities all over the country, and a team based at the institutions, and they are directing aspects of science that we're doing down at the shore. The samples that we collect and the information that we collect are available for use by scientists all over the world. So the geological samples are stored at the University of Rhode Island, and the biological samples are stored at Harvard, and they are available to scientists anywhere who wish to use them. So it's great. Everything that we're seeing and everything that we're doing is available for scientists everywhere.
Well, I'm sure and very happy that you have this information available and that you guys are participating in this and bringing the world to your location through your live feeds. Anything else that our viewers should know about your project before I move on to our next guest?
I guess the really exciting thing about our project is that it does turn viewers everywhere, everyday people into explorers, and so out here on the ship we really love the opportunity to share sense of wonder with people everywhere. So definitely head along to Nautilus Live, and we'd love to chat with you on there.
All right, thank you very much for participating and joining us from the sea, which is actually a relative first for us. Next up, folks, I know that some concepts in nature like dead zones, erosion, sea level rise are a bit hard to wrap your head around. Next up, I'd like to introduce somebody who works, whose work actually helps with people with these conceptual problems and more. Next up, I'd love to introduce Aaron from Owlized. Welcome to the program.
Thanks, Andrew. My name is Aaron Selverston. I'm the CEO and founder of Owlized. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, hear you great.
Great. I wanted to share with you a little bit about a project that we're working on with FEMA. And if it's okay, I'll just do a screen share and kind of dive right in.
As long as you tell us what the owl is and what it does.
Absolutely, yeah. So we'll start with that.
All right.
Can you see this?
Yeah, looks great.
Okay, great. So the project I'm going to tell you about is it's a pilot test, and it's called the Owl Sea Level Rise Viewer. As I'm sure everyone on this call is acutely aware, the cost estimated to upgrade our coastal infrastructure globally to mitigate the impacts of sea level rise is somewhere around $28 trillion, at least according to Allianz. And so the question that I always think of first is, who's going to pay for those upgrades? Will it be, taxpayers, perhaps the oil companies, perhaps this cute baby goat? Unfortunately, we're left with taxpayers to foot the bill, I think, in many cases. So I think that's potentially very problematic, given the fact that, according to a Gallup poll from March of this year, Americans rank climate change nearly dead last on the priority list for the country. And so we need to find a better way of communicating the impacts to the public, and beyond just communicating, finding an engaging, interactive way of doing so that people take some greater sense of ownership over the problem. So this is the owl. It'll probably look familiar to you if you've ever used the old classic coin-operated binoculars. You see its scenic viewpoints. What we've done is developed a new digital version of that device that, instead of showing you what's actually in front of you, it shows you the future of what's in front of you. And we've used this for a number of applications, ranging from showing people the future of a streetscape to showing people what a place used to look like historically. And so our customers include cities and commercial property developers and people that manage and design historic places. But what we're doing here is using it to show the public high probability sea level rise scenarios as determined by our partners at NOAA and USGS. And the goal is to boost public support for adaptation policies, as well as educating public as to the impacts. And we also believe that in doing so, we will be able to help drive environmental stewardship actions, which will be determined by our local partners in Marin County and will be tracked via a scientific observation conducted by Dr. Suzanne Moser, who I'll talk about in a sec. So the lead agency here is FEMA. They gave us a grant to pilot test this concept, and we've partnered with the County of Marin to deploy owls to 2 high-risk, vulnerable coastal locations where there's a lot of foot traffic. When you look through the owl, you will see 360-degree visualizations of future impact scenarios and current high tide or El Nino and king tide events. So you'll be able to compare what already is occurring today when you have king tide events against king tide plus 3 feet or king tide plus 6 feet, so people can really vividly get a sense of what it looks like. When you look through the owl, it's a virtual reality experience. So we're creating a 3D visualization of these potential scenarios. And after you look around, and there's even a button on the owl handle so you can kind of toggle through different impact scenarios, then the user experience brings you to a page where you're prompted to take some stewardship action, which will determine, maybe it's signing up for rooftop solar or what have you. So Dr. Moser, who was a co-author of the National Climate Assessment and has been a foremost climate researcher for decades, she has kind of switched her focus and is now really interested in social science because as anyone that's been tracking this issue for as long as she's been involved is aware, we've released working group report after working group report from IPCC and nothing driven, at least to the public, to make this as needs to be. And she's really interested to know why and to explore solutions to that problem. So she's part of the grant. Most of the grant will actually be funding her research, and we will be tracking the results, packaging those into a best practices document, and distributing those to our partner organizations. I'm just going to skip this slide. These are just a couple snapshots. Typically, these are animated, just showing you some examples of the visualizations that we've produced for other locations. Stop right in here. So the way the owl works is the head pans and tilts in all directions, and there's a sound system built into it, so it'll play back audio when you hover over certain features. Like, let's say in the view of when you're looking at sea level rise visualizations, maybe we'll end on a page that actually shows some green infrastructure solutions. And when you hover over, let's say, a living, wetland barrier, it would play back audio describing what you're looking at. There's also a survey feature so that we can track how people are responding, and Dr. Moser will design the questionnaire. We're interested in the emotional
component. How do people feel when confronted with these visualizations? And so the owl, it bolts to the ground. It's weatherproof. You can leave it there overnight. It's got a 3D display. And as the experiment moves forward, we will be able to push new visualizations to it remotely. And so the user experience will be crafted in the coming months as we actually kick off this project early in November. And so it'll look something like this. You walk up, you hit a button, you toggle through different sea level rise scenarios, and Owl will describe what you're looking at as you're toggling through. So here's what 3 feet looks like, here's what 6 feet looks like, etc. And then Owl will promote specific adaptation measures that Marin County is trying to implement. And here in the Bay Area, Marin County is the tip of the spear in terms of developing and implementing a regional adaptation strategy. That regional plan is being spearheaded by, is being organized by the Bay Area Conservation and Development Commission, of which Marin County plays a critical role as a member, and the district supervisor in Marin County, Supervisor Kate Sears, sits on the Sea Level Rise Task Force for BCDC. BCDC made up of gubernatorial appointees, and so they're really leading the regional response. And then finally, the OWL, as I mentioned, will promote some stewardship action. And we'll track, we'll see how effective is the OWL, not just at educating people as to the impacts, but also driving stewardship actions. So we've a number of partners have come together on this, ranging from our non, the executive director, Kara Pike, is there with you now, Andrew, in Austin. And she really brought together, she brought FEMA in, and her organization is entirely focused on climate communication and developing the best sort of communications strategies in terms of messaging, talking points, best practices for ensuring that the way we talk about climate and communicate about it generally has the most impact. Autodesk is providing the technological support, and they're also there, I believe, again. And we were at South by Eco last year in Autodesk's booth, and they were sort of early partners with us, helping kind of push this concept forward. And so now they're going to be continuing by helping develop the process for producing these visualizations, because we have to translate terrain data to a first-person view. And I mentioned Stanford, Dr. Moser is there, NOAA, California Coastal Commission, these other partners. I'm going to skip that slide. So that's it. That's the brief overview. We're going to be launching, I think, as early as December, as late as March of next year, and look forward to sharing the results once they're in.
Well, it's a really fantastic project. It kind of builds on the whole concept of what's the old phrase, seeing is believing. So you mentioned the fact that you were here at South by Southwest Eco last year. Can you speak to that experience and how that experience got you to where you are currently?
Yeah, that was actually the first time that we had ever brought a proof of concept OWL out to the public. And it was, I think, fitting that we were able to do it at a eco-related conference, given that the OWL has so many applications. It can really be used to show any future visualization or even historic visualization of a place. But personally, sea level rise and climate change has been an issue that's near and dear to my heart. My background is in journalism. My graduate thesis was on how sea level rise is impacting the Republic of Kiribati. That was a story that aired nationally on NPR. And so I feel like this is all sort of coming full circle. And I was a sociology major in undergrad, journalism. I have a master's degree in journalism. So I've always been fascinated in not just the issue of climate change, but how we communicate it and develop new, effective
communication strategies to ensure that the story is being told in an impactful way. And so I think that these conferences and gatherings are traditionally, they represent the tip of the spear and the first sort of showcases of innovative new technologies on all fronts, and it provided a very critical stepping stone for us to gain some attention and traction, which we have been able to leverage and grow over the last year to the point where we are today, where we have real customers. And as a San Francisco tech startup, it's a tough game, and but we've done really well in a short amount of time, and I attribute that in large part to the early success that we had in Austin last year.
Well, that's a really great success story, and you gave a really fantastic presentation. You kind of went over all of my questions for you for right now, but living in San Francisco, I'm going to be scouting out all of your different locations come either November or December when it does launch, and trying them all out, and hopefully I don't skew your surveys. But keep up the fantastic work. And with that, I'd love to move from virtual exploration to somebody who has direct hands-on experience with ocean exploration, especially through submersibles and other projects. I'd love to introduce the president of DOER Marine Deep Ocean Exploration, research on, again, submarines, and just an all-around awesome person. Welcome to the Hangout, Elizabeth Taylor.
Thank you so much. So we're here at DOER, and behind me you can see one of our deep water ROV systems. This particular one is a 6,500 meter rated system, so it's able to access a little more than 90% of the deep sea.
So can you tell us a little bit more about that system? All I'm seeing right here is like what looks like a bunch of machinery and a cage.
Well, the cage on top is a device called the tether management system, and it's similar to what Hannah was talking about with their two-part system, but in this case, the tether management system goes with the ROV coupled together over the side down to the working depth. It could be 1,000 meters, 4,000, all the way down to 6,500 meters. And then the two decouple, and the ROV flies out from the tether manager on a separate umbilical cable. It acts a lot like a flexi lead on a dog, so the tether manager is here, and then a rover comes out and explores around on the end of his leash. It's always kept in constant tension, so we don't have a danger of entanglement. But it's a great versatile tool, and one of the nice things about it, using modern technology, we've been able to shrink down the size of a vehicle like this. The Jason ROV, for example, is nearly 10,000 pounds. It's enormous. It takes a large crew of people just to get it on and off the deck. This vehicle weighs less than half that amount, even with the TMS included, and takes a crew of 3. So one of the things we've tried to do is shrink down the number of technicians that's required to put this thing operating at sea, so we can free up space on the ship for a larger science party. Because they need to be out there getting their samples, getting their data, and really not having to worry about keeping the machine running, as we see so much of the time happens.
In regards to the ROV that you guys have produced, you guys, DOER exploration mainly has been in the submersible realm, correct? And this is kind of a new venture for you?
Well, we really believe in the full toolbox approach. The biggest cost in going to sea is, of course, the ship. So if you're going to bother to go and spend a lot of money on a ship, go out loaded for bear. You want to have an AUV for mapping. You want to have some landers you can throw over the side and pick up later. You want to have multi-beam on the ship if possible. You want to have an ROV to go down and ground truth what the AUV maps. And then you want to have a manned, human-occupied, women can go in it too, human-occupied submersible to go down and really spend that kind of time and have the sort of experience that Greg was mentioning, where you're making the direct human observations, coming back, telling the stories. It's fundamentally different, it's great, and this vehicle can do it too, to have the direct connectivity to the internet. Having people go down and have that experience it's kind of like the difference between going out to dinner and watching the dinner on the Food Channel. It's a little bit different, and quite a compelling experience to be able to come back and share those direct stories.
Well, I do. Sorry, go ahead.
One example of that was Sylvia was down in one of the small submersibles and was waiting for her turn to come back to the ship, and noticed something just out of peripheral vision. Kind of turned the submersible to see what was going on, and here was an enormous deep water octopus just hanging out in the shadows watching her in the submersible. Spent some time there. Of course, she then refused to come to the surface. It's typical. But she watched the octopus watched her. Eventually, it came all the way over to the submersible and started sort of suckering the dome, checking out the lights, feeling the arm on the manipulator, and it really stayed engaged for more than an hour with her. Wow. And ultimately kind of lifted its mantle and revealed the large egg mass that it was carrying around with it. So it was a big female. So really great experience. You would never really be able to have that kind of intimate experience just using cameras. So it's, they're great complementary tools, and we love having the ability to work with both of them and other tools as well.
Well, you just mentioned a very specific anecdote from Dr. Earle, and for those who have documentary about her work and her life, there's another anecdote in there as well that you would have had the experience with the ROV, where she's down deep and collecting samples, looking around, and she has the decision to turn off the lights, and all of a sudden there's all of these bioluminescent critters around just glowing and sparkling in the dark. And correct me if I'm wrong, but with an ROV, you wouldn't have been able to have that type of experience.
Well, it's true you can shut down some of the lights on board, but the problem is that when you do that, oftentimes the cameras don't have the kind of sensitivity that you need to be able to see that as well as you could with the human eye. So there are some kinds of sensors and things that you can put on an ROV, so you can kind of see when the bioluminescent creatures hit the sensor disc. But it's the sort of thing that's really best experienced in a submersible. And again, one of these sorts of things where using some of these submersibles, you're able to kind of stop, hover, even mid-water, and really be able to take in that complete experience.
That's fantastic. Really, very good point. If I could redirect the conversation a little bit, you are an expert in regards to ocean exploration materials and devices, from submarines to now ROVs. Can you speak to any type of trends or innovations that you're seeing within that domain?
Well, as Greg was saying as well, we're seeing things coming down in price, things getting smaller, faster. So today with an ROV, we're able to bring up terabytes of data per hour of operational time, which is enormously amazing. But of course, with that same problem comes, what do you do with all that data? As Hannah was saying, you try to get it out, you share it with as many people as you possibly can, but there still is this sort of lag that goes on in getting the information out to where it can do the most good, because we really don't have a lot of time to mess around waiting for stuff to be peer-reviewed for 3 years. We need to get some of this information out as quickly as humanly possible so that we're able to act upon our findings and see greater collaboration with the data sets. So, there's some great supercomputers out there. I'd love to see them used to kind of really crunch the numbers on some of this scientific data that's being collected.
You totally just touched on a point that is very true to my heart about open data and sharing data and getting data to the hands of everybody that can use it, including people who do analysis or make awesome immersive games. Can you speak a little bit to the crossover between exploration, conservation, and innovation? Again, from your perspective as somebody who makes all these awesome toys. Sorry, toys is probably the wrong word. I want to play with them. I'm just saying.
Yeah, everybody wants to play with them. They're all cool. But it's really true that more people need the information and be able to act upon it. I mean, one of the things, maybe correlates nicely with what Aaron's working on, is our use of this sort of technology in infrastructure inspection. We're able to look at things like tunnels, levees, bridges, pipelines, and make determinations about how healthy are they, how many cracks do they have, are they starting to fall apart at the seams, and not just have sort of an engineer look at that, but have a city manager look at that and say, look, what is the actual risk that we're facing here, and do we need some kind of an early warning system to move people out of harm's way, instead of just sort of saying, oh, well, we've built in 1840. It'll hold up. It's held up all these years. There's different levels, different ways that the data can be used for the broader good, and getting citizen scientists involved, getting politicians involved. It's again falls back to one of the great things about manned submersible. We have a 3-person submersible. We can get Sylvia in the pilot seat, and then we can take down a politician, a musician, student, Uncle Frank and Aunt Ida from Iowa. Get them involved. Get them that direct experience underwater. See what's at risk. Don't just sort of spend a lot of money trying to access deep sea minerals or oil and gas, but you need to have that whole picture and understand what's at risk from doing these extractive activities and make a really informed choice that way.
Now, that's a very good point, getting the decision makers and even the individuals who are in landlocked Iowa to be able to experience all of this different aspects of the ocean, and again, what's at risk. You mentioned Sylvia, and I wanted to bring up again the fact that she's giving one of the keynote speeches here at South by Southwest Eco, and as somebody who is involved in ocean communications, ocean issues, etc., I've noticed an uptick in a lot of attention on ocean work here at South by Southwest Eco and around. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what this means to you, and from your experience within the ocean community, that there's such attention on this portion of our world that makes up a large percentage, but not as much focus traditionally.
Yeah, well, I think it's great to see the uptick in it, and of course, during Sylvia's work in the film, we're really seeing some attention coming to her hope spot idea. And any place could be a hope spot. It can be a place that is in good shape and we want to find a way to protect it, or it could be in a place that has been pretty done over by our activities, but there's still hope for recovery there. And if we take the proper steps, we're able to see improvement over time. I think we see that happening a lot along coastal areas where, for example, we have mangrove forests that have traditionally been torn down to put up beachfront hotels. And only now we're sort of realizing that, hey, those mangroves are giving us a lot of bang for the buck for free, and really be looking after them because they are going to mitigate storm damage. They're going to help control coastal erosion. They'll help buffer climate disruption, sea level rise. So there's more ways and means that people are seeing that it makes good economic sense to look after the place. And so, if you're a FEMA or you're a government agent, other government agency, it makes sense for you to put money into preserving swamps and marshes and mangrove forests, because if you don't, your bill, the taxpayer bill, when that big hurricane comes through and rips it apart, is going to be much bigger if you don't have those natural forces acting to protect you.
Very excellent point. Maybe those mangroves were there for a reason. So in mentioning Sylvia, we have about a few minutes before she actually goes up and starts speaking, so I want to kind of wrap up this conversation and give everybody the chance to speak on one key topic discussion, and that's kind of the question of where everybody sees innovation and the ocean community coming together to solve problems. And I'd first love to throw it over to Kathy, if you could, give your perspective. Sorry to put you on spot.
No,
go ahead.
No problem. One of the big messages we've gotten from South by Southwest Eco is how important it is to reach people young and in means of communication that they're comfortable with. So we feel like we're in the right place at the right time with a game that's teaching about ocean education and why it's important. And being able to partner with Sylvia on something like that, I think gives the planet a chance. If we can just all focus on getting Sylvia's message out, I think that would be fantastic.
That's really great words to hear, and totally in agreement on that. Hannah, I'd love to throw it to you, who is out on the field. Can you speak to innovation, communication, collaboration, and what it means in your perspective for the ocean world?
Absolutely. I think for people out there, knowing the problem, understanding the problem, knowing what they can do about it, and how they can actually make a difference are some of the huge challenges. And I think technology and ocean innovation have a huge role to play in making the environment and the planet not only more accessible but more rich experience, and connecting people with others working in this area. So I think exploration and discovery definitely have a role to play in informing what needs to be done and how we might do it.
Innovation, communication, collaboration, and solutions. Aaron?
Sorry, you cut out for the first part of the question. Could you repeat that?
Where do you see the collaboration, innovation, and solutions for the ocean from your perspective?
Well, I probably have a slightly more nuanced perspective, considering that I don't live and breathe oceans daily like everyone else on this call, and so I'm honored to be here. But I will say that one common thread that ties this together is big data and the ability to bring big data to, well, first to interpret that data using visualization platforms or games or other mediums that make that data digestible, both to scientists and to the public at large. And so the bigger picture I think that we're seeing with vis-a-vis big data is the emergence of a variety of new interfaces that help us sort through and make sense of big data. And I think that that will continue to be an area that's ripe for innovation and where there's many business opportunities, but more importantly, where there's the greatest potential for social impact.
Really fantastic point. Big data is one of the big issues here at South by Southwest Eco. Elizabeth, I'd love to hear your perspective real quick.
Unmuting there.
That's fine.
Yeah. So, yeah, I totally agree with that. You know, figuring out ways and means that we can, again, share that data, make it really useful and across different categories of people, not just the science community, but for decision makers at large. Put the facts in front of them. You know, with knowing comes the ability to make wiser decisions, and really getting out the information so that people are able to make changes in their daily lives, make better decisions. You know, everything from bringing your own cup to Starbucks to whatever it takes, making those little tiny choices every day and making a difference.
Most definitely. The little actions you do impact everything. Greg, I'd love for you to bring us on home.
I don't know if I can do that, but I'll give you my views. I agree with everything that's been said, especially the communication pieces and information management. I guess the thing I would add to this is that, you know, I'm going to give you a few numbers. And the thing I really want to add is that to really make change on the planet for the oceans, we need to engage the private sector, the business community, because that's really what drives things. I mean, the UN has no power compared to the business community of the Earth when we look at the forces that are at play here. And these business chains the businesses want to secure their supply chains into the future, and they all kind of go back to the ocean. Now, here are the numbers I'm going to give you. Annually, there's about $400 to $500 billion are given philanthropically throughout the world. That includes churches. Okay. Now let's go to public spending. What do governments spend every year? They spend about $17 trillion. Okay, so it's way up there compared to philanthropy. Now, what does the private sector spend? They spend about $170 trillion. Okay, that's the magnitude of the private sector engagement in the Earth, right? In the planetary systems. If we don't get that right, you can forget about the public spending, because for better or for worse, money is a very good and accurate metric for what's important to humanity, right? So I would say that everything's been said is spot on, but let's get a business leader onto this panel next year. Let's get the CEO of Walmart or Sodexo or something like that, and say, what does the ocean mean to your company? You know, get them prepped, and they'll be able to respond appropriately. So the scientific community, we're bonded, we're with it. The communication community is there, but the business community we have to bring them in, and I think that's the key.
Well, thank you so much for your perspective. I would love to retort that there are a lot of people in the business community that are not only on the ocean elders like Richard Branson and other people like that, and they're paving the way for all these other groups. I guess the real big focus here before we run off to go see Sylvia's big speech is that we need to collaborate between both the private sector and the public sector. Organizations that are out there need to understand their impact and need to understand the fact that if a large swaths of the ocean are no longer usable, that impacts everybody. Big data, collaboration, innovation, exploration, all of these shuns are really influential in things that we need to keep on exploring and keep on partnering with. So for those who will speak on all of these subjects live, you can actually stream it through either Mission Blue or South by Southwest Eco. For my participants in this panel, thank you so much for coming. Really great to have you aboard. Would love to have more in-depth conversations when I don't have to run off. But for now, I have to run off and go see an amazing speaker give an amazing speech. So thank you so much. Keep your eyes on the ocean, and let's make some big waves out there.
Tsunami of team.
Thank you.